Hello and welcome to this episode of Kennedy Saves the World. We are at the Baird Center in beautiful Milwaukee, Wisconsin, right in the heart of the perimeter of the Republican National Convention. Things are very different now from conventions that I've covered and attended in the past. The first one I went to was 1996 when Bob Dole was, of course, the Republican nominee. And the party was very optimistic that he would beat Bill Clinton. It's hard to beat an incumbent, although Joe Biden did it in 2020. And the vibe there was optimistic, but it's hard to beat a transformational younger candidate from the other party when you are an establishment Republican. And so now what Donald Trump is trying to do as a transformational Republican is beat Joe Biden and become president again, which maybe 6 months ago seemed like less of a possibility than it does today. But when I walk around the convention and talk to delegates and members of the press and people from Milwaukee who are just very curious about what's happening in their own city, I get a sense that people feel there's more of an inevitability for Donald Trump to beat Joe Biden this time around. In 1996, the convention was in San Diego. Since then, I had covered some of the conventions, not in person, but for various news outlets. And then in 2012, I went to the Republican convention in Tampa. And I will tell you that Mitt Romney was there. Again, hard to beat an incumbent. Mitt Romney, not the kind of person who's going to wildly swing the pendulum of the party in his direction with his natural man charisma. And, obviously he was not successful back then, even though Obama had an uphill climb, certainly with Republican and independent voters. Those in his own party were very comfortable with his charm, not necessarily his policies, maybe. And I remember in Tampa, the perimeter was so hard to breach that they wouldn't let anyone come in with hairspray. And it was a very humid place. So there was a lot of panic among the female and some of the long-haired male attendees at the RNC in 2012. But somehow we got through it. It was the first time I met Bill O'Reilly, RIP from Fox. And I kept bugging him mercilessly because he was my news guy in Portland growing up. And so I was so excited to see my news guy, even though I knew that he was very famous from Fox and other places. And I kept annoying him to the point where my producer said, if you don't stop talking to him, you're going to get us both fired. That's also the first time that I met Greg Gutfeld, and he was so much fun. And I'm going to be on his show. I'm so excited. Yay. That's going to happen tonight. As you know, all of the Fox News shows essentially are broadcasting from here. And there's a great deal of chatter, not only about the assassination attempt on Saturday and how that has changed the dynamic, because it certainly has. In 2016, in Cleveland, Trump was still very much an unknown quantity and almost like an experiment within the Republican Party and within the country. Can we have someone who's so far outside the establishment go into Washington, actually win the election, and then go into D.C. and make the kind of changes that he promised? And a lot of that vote was against Hillary Clinton because she was seen as being part of this dynastic Democratic machine. And they really wanted to make sure that she didn't ascend to the presidency because she didn't bring too much more than vitriol and entitlement. And for a lot of voters, especially the independent voters, that just wasn't enough. So Trump was victorious there. Cleveland was fun. It was very windy. I was on an episode of Outnumbered where we were outside, and the wind was so bad there are still pictures of it on the internet of Sandra Smith's hair blowing to the side. And Meghan McCain was there too. So that's what I remember from Cleveland.
Don't go anywhere. More Kennedy Saves the World right after this.
And of course, Trump dominated. Trump-Pence, that was the ticket. 2020, it was the COVID year. There wasn't really a convention. Joe Biden got to broadcast from his basement. He was, a very boring, traditional, non-transformational candidate. And now 2024, you've got a completely different dynamic because The president has obviously declined in health, mental acuity, his ability to walk and hold his hands normally and move his arms while he's walking. He shuffles, he mumbles, he gets names wrong, he bombed the debate, and had a very slow reaction to the assassination attempt. Trump obviously beat impeachment, beat indictments. He was convicted. His poll numbers went up. The case against him was dismissed by a federal judge because Jack Smith's appointment was unconstitutional. And now here we are on Saturday. Someone tried to assassinate the former president of the United States, who is the leading candidate for president. And that has changed this convention that we are seeing now. There is something very calm, almost a little eerie about the convention. People feel very protective over the president, and you didn't see that level of vulnerability from him and from the people who are his most ardent fans and biggest fans of his policies and personality, but you are definitely seeing that now. It is a palpable feeling that they feel protective of him. And, the shooting has brought out something very interesting, and that's more Democrats coming forward saying that, they don't mind voting for Trump this time. And Biden, as you can see, there's more support hemorrhaging away from him, including, that giant lollipop head in California, Adam Schiff, who's running for Senate there, who has called for Biden to step aside. He's only the most recent person. We're now hearing that the call that Biden had with, important Democrats over the weekend went very, very badly. Some are saying worse than his debate performance, which is almost hard to imagine unless he completely seized up and then went into a coma spontaneously and started sputtering cream of wheat out of his face. But that's possible. So where do we go from here? The Republicans obviously will get a bounce. I think we're going to see some exciting speeches tonight. As a libertarian, I'm looking to see what J.D. Vance can offer to the limited government, liberty-minded people in the Republican Party and beyond, and if he is as substantive as he needs to be in order to be this all-important vice presidential pick. I thought last night's speeches were very interesting and moving and impressive. And it also goes to show this time around, it's much more about the issues than it is just the personalities, because there are so many things that have gone wrong over the last 4 years that there are a lot of people, and I've spoken to people, delegates, and within their communities, they're most worried about immigration, fentanyl, and jobs and the economy than they are about being part of a Trump cult. There is not as much investment in that. And if they can stay on message, if the president can keep this sort of subdued side of him that is an attractive quality that many Trump haters hadn't seen before, then I think he will do just fine. The Democrats' problem is only growing, and I don't see how they reconcile everything before their convention, which is a little over a month away in August. I'll keep you posted. We'll talk again tomorrow. This has been Kennedy Saves the World from Milwaukee. I'm Kennedy.
Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app. Oh, go ahead and leave me a review while you're there. I'd love to hear what you have to say. You've been listening to Kennedy Saves the World on the Fox News Podcast Network.